Let's get into your questions for the week. What's a breaker, David, when voting, where you simply will not vote for someone if they have a certain view for or against something or do a certain thing? So I'll answer this. It's important that we differentiate between litmus tests, deal breakers, and sort of being like a single issue voter, because these are all different things. I've talked before about the way in which litmus tests can be damaging to getting the worst person out of office or preventing the worst candidate from winning, when litmus tests are used to divide a movement in a way that makes it fail to do what the bigger goal sort of is. What I think it's damaging to do is to go from thinking about deal breakers in a reasonable way to litmus tests that are sort of out of context and sometimes self-defeating, to the type of single issue mentality that can almost make you a damaging participant in the system in the context of achieving broader goals. Also, I think that what is a deal breaker in a primary election can be different than what is a deal breaker in a general election. And I think, the centrist establishment Democrats like Joe Biden, the latest version of Pete Buttigieg, because in 2018, his rhetoric was far more leftist, Amy Klobuchar, et cetera, I would still vote for them in the general election. So I think that that's important to consider. Often for me, the things that feel like deal breakers, where I just become so disgusted with a candidate that I just won't even consider them, the sort of WTF moments, it's social issues. And what's interesting about that is that economic issues are the ones that are much more impactful to a greater number of people in many ways. But when I find out, like, if you think gay people shouldn't be married, that's a drastically different thing than we disagree what the top marginal tax rate would be. Now, interestingly enough, what the top marginal tax rate is and the government revenue that comes from that and what can be done with that money may actually impact way more people than whether a candidate believes that gay and lesbian couples should or shouldn't be able to get married. But at this point, it is so whacked to me to still be saying, I'm really against two guys getting married or two women getting married. There's no sensible reason for that. There is debate about what the top marginal tax rate should be. Now, if you want to come to me and say the rich should pay no taxes and the poor should pay huge taxes, that's so stupid that maybe it would become a deal breaker. But there is a debate to be had about where the top marginal tax rate should be and what the tax brackets should be. And it's not a deal breaker in that cartoonish way. Somebody who believes the Bible should be the law of the land, that seems like a deal breaker to me. And it's hard to imagine someone just coming out and saying it. It's usually intimated or implied through positions on abortion or gay marriage or whatever else. You can't think climate change is just a fake hoax, right? That's a deal breaker. You could disagree about how we should deal with climate change. You can disagree about how we should deal with carbon credits versus, what we can have that debate. But you can't think that it's made up. That is a deal breaker. But really, it's all context. We've talked on the program before about how it's really important to know what our principles are, but those who just focus on the principles often are unable to actually have pragmatic conversations and make pragmatic decisions when you have to apply the principles to the real world. Eventually, you're choosing between two or a few people in terms of who's likely to actually represent you in a candidacy. The principles are important as a starting point, and eventually you would try to apply those principles to the positions of the candidate, and concessions likely have to be made. And so I think it's great to understand what are the deal breakers for you. You don't want to go over into sort of toxic litmus test world where you end up damaging your own movement. And eventually, you almost always are going to have to make some compromises on whoever it is you choose to support.